Welcome everybody to the second ever stream of DBB Live. Hope you've all had a great day so far and are ready to talk some Detroit basketball. Just a quick reminder how this is all going to work. So you guys go ahead, put your questions in the comment section here on the YouTube page. We're going to answer as many of them as we can. I know we missed some last week, but we're going to try to cover as many as we can. So with that being said, I'm Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys, and I am joined by the Aussie himself, Jack Kelly. Jack, my man, how you feeling today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm always excited to be here to talk Pistons hoops. So, yeah, man, let's get into it. Always plenty to discuss, especially with this fan base. So I'm sure we're going to get some good questions tonight, have some good conversations, and yeah, let's do it.
Definitely. And as you guys can see, we are joined by the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys himself, Sean Corp. Sean, thanks for hanging out.
Oh, Sean's on mute. I did that
He's
last
on
week
mute.
as well, Sean.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Now, we got you.
My light was not blinking red. I'm upset. All right. I'm ready to talk Pistons. The offseason's the best part. There's no sadness, only happiness, only hopes and dreams.
Love it. So before we get to any questions, I just kind of wanted to throw this one out to both of you guys. And this is more for me, okay? So I wanted to bite the bullet now, like a month before the draft lottery, but I'm having nightmares. I'm having nightmares of the Pistons ending up with the second overall pick. I feel really comfortable sitting here saying Scoot and Brandon Miller, they're great players, but I don't have to make a choice right now. And if they get the second overall pick, I'm going to have to. So, can either of you like alleviate my nightmares here, Jack? Maybe.
Are your nightmares more based around sort of the online discourse that might come of that selection, or more of
Literally
because
just making the choice myself, like having to pick a side in the discourse is just it's
I
frightening
think
to me.
I think for me, it's still a pretty good problem to have. There's a lot of options with that second overall pick. You can trade it potentially. I know that would be controversial, but yeah, it's for me, it's the ultimate test of the best player available theory. Like, do you take the best player available? I still think Scoot's, the guy to take at number two, or from most draft experts, seems to be the guy you take at number two. But then Miller fits everything this team needs. I mean, Weaver cited in his end of season press conference, defense on the wing, shooting. So yeah, which path does he go, or does he take? Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting.
For sure. John, yeah, what thoughts do you have?
Well, I'm wondering if picking two is a nightmare. What's picking five to you?
I'm happy at 5. I got a couple guys I really
You
like.
got to get your priorities straight, man.
I
To
know,
me,
I know.
no, number two's, I mean, you have to watch all the film, you have to make the decisions, but it can't be fit. It has to be best player. And if that's Scoot, you just take Scoot and you figure things out. Because ultimately, if the quote unquote problem is I have too many good wings, like guard wings, like darn, good problem to have. Figure it out. Have an interesting rotation. Make a blockbuster trade. Just don't draft a lesser player for fit, or I will lose my mind because I feel like there's a history of the Pistons doing that, and I never want to see it again.
That's fair. All right, that does make me feel a little bit better. Thank you. Jack, I know we got some questions going, so why don't you get the ball rolling for us?
We do. So KDA 1024 asks, who will the Pistons retain currently on the roster? I might turn this one over to Sean.
Okay, let me think. The Cade, Jaden, Jalen, and then there's a lot of question marks, but I feel like obviously they're not going to move Isaiah unless he's packaged in part of a deal. They're not going to move their veterans unless there's a big package deal. So you can pencil in Alec Burks, you can pencil in Bowen, and then it's does anyone want Killian? Not really. So unless it's a package deal, he's going to come back for his final year before free agency. And then, you've already basically got your rotation set until new, better players can kind of fill those spots. Plus, obviously a draft pick who's going to get at minimum 20, 25 minutes. So that's sort of the core of the team. And then the Pistons try and fit things around that, is my guess.
All right, so I pulled up the depth chart here just so I'm not trying to make everything up
Yeah,
as
who am
I
I
go.
missing?
All right, so you said Cade, Ivy, Burks, Bojan, Duren, Stewart. I think I would probably add. I think they do like Wiseman. I bet he stays.
Oh,
I'm with you on
I
Killian. I bet he sticks around. Um, Livers. I think Livers will stick. I'd love to see Hami back. And of Corey and Magruder, I think Magruder probably sticks around. I think he comes back on a super cheap 1 year contract and does the same thing he did this year, but hopefully not play.
Yeah, I mean, Corey is going to be a back of the rotation player on any team, but he probably could get that job with a contender-ish team, so he might try and go for that. I feel like Magruder's just sort of enjoying life as an NBA player and contributing and mentoring, and he'd just do that where he's happy and not try and chase anything after that. And then he'll just go into coaching or something.
I can definitely see that. Jack, what are you thinking on that? Who are we keeping?
Well, I think outside of the young guys, the young core, I would say Alec Burks definitely. I feel like that team option definitely gets picked up. Bogey's one I'm not sure about. I could see him getting traded draft night. But yeah, Hamadou seems like he could be gone. I am just basing that off him listing his house. So there's no inside information there. Yeah, the player I'm curious about, or players, is the Wiseman and Bagley. I mean, Troy's guys, Wiseman, we all know that. But how do those two coexist alongside Stu and Duren? I know this has been discussed a ton, but yeah, I'll be interested to see if both Bagley and Wiseman do return.
Yeah, I feel like one of them probably is going to go. I personally wouldn't hate bringing them all four of those bigs back if you don't land Victor. Actually, even if you do, I might say play him at the 3. But at least on the basic idea, I don't hate bringing all four of them back. But if I'm putting down money, I would bet Bagley might move. I mean, he's got that kind of sweet spot contract, right? Where if you want to hit a money level, you kind of need to throw him into a deal. I feel like he might be on the move.
I guess
But that's
one
again
guy
not based on anything.
One guy we forgot is, what do you think about Buddy Boeheim? Do you think he comes back, or?
Oh man, he's a shoo-in. He's definitely coming back. Yeah.
Do you think he ever plays another NBA minute?
I feel bad for him, man. No.
Me too.
It was hard to watch, I must admit.
Hey, at least you watched. That's more than a lot of people.
Yeah, the people getting on his case online, I was like, oh man, like I get it's frustrating, but this is hard to watch. But anyway, that's enough Buddy Boeheim chat.
Can I make a Wiseman point real quick?
For sure.
I feel like people are overcommitted to the narrative that Troy Weaver is like super invested in Wiseman. To me, this is just me. I think he just saw a buy low opportunity, and he was like, well, Sadiq doesn't really fit long term. Doing some simple math, let's take a swing. And then, the swing's going to work or it's not going to work. Spoiler, it's probably not going to work. And then you just kind of move on. Like, the clock was ticking on Sadiq. If he wanted big money and he knew the team wasn't going to give it to him, then like that could create tension that's not very valuable. Now I think Sadiq is a limited player, but better than Wiseman. So, and I think I probably would have taken 4 or 5 second rounders if I had to trade Sadiq instead of Wiseman, but I'm not Trey Weaver. But I don't think like Troy Weaver is going to move heaven and earth or make a bad deal to open up time for Wiseman or clear up a logjam for Wiseman or invest in like a 3-year contract, despite the evidence we're seeing. Like, we're just going to play out the string and see what happens. That's just my take.
I think I agree with that. I think I'm pretty confident he's around next year only because I doubt that the last 20 games of this season were, the deciding factor on whether he's going to fit or not. I think they do want to give it an off season and just see what he can do. But I agree that the idea he's super committed to Wiseman long term probably isn't the case. He was probably just taking a swing. Yeah, I think I'm with you.
All right. Next question, once again, is from KDA1024. Thanks for all the questions, by the way. Who is the most likely current Piston to be involved in a trade? Wes?
I think it's got to be Bagley. I mean, again, just his contract size is kind of in the sweet spot. He's 13-ish million total. Like the amount that he's getting paid, you could throw into almost any deal and get a lot of cap back. You could take on a lot of money by adding him. So I think of the guys that are most likely, it's probably Bagley just because of that. I mean, he's a very flexible asset that can be added to a trade. So I think that'd be my answer.
For sure. Sean?
12.5.
I think that,
Thanks, Kyle.
I think that's probably right. And if I'm not going to just say Bagley, I would say like who's going to be packaged in a deal? Who's going to kind of just be that superfluous piece? So then you're getting into pieces like, frankly, Killian or Isaiah Stewart, who has upside to maybe kind of tilt the balance of a deal, questioning long-term fit with the Pistons and just trying to figure something out. I don't think they're going to just move on from one of the veterans unless there's a big trade that presents itself, and they're just much more likely to be dealt in season than during the off season.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess, so you guys, what about like a Bogdanovich trade? I guess maybe he's 2 years, 40 million owing. I guess if you made that trade draft night, I'm not sure how that works, but I could probably see him potentially being moved.
Yeah, I think that's conducive on not how the draft plays out, but how free agency plays out. So, like, if they have a target and it means moving Bogdanovich because you don't want to move him to the bench and there's just no further fit, then, it just becomes part of the math of making that free agency deal. So it could happen. I mean, I'm not saying that it's super unlikely. I think it's just everything's pretty contingent on free agency or the kind of trades they see that facilitates their free agency strategy.
Yeah,
sure.
I think I'm with you. If I was going to bet, I'd say no, but I mean, he's a valuable player. The right move could come around. Like, I don't think they're desperately hanging on to Bojan, right? I think if something were to come up where it made sense to do it, they would. So I think it's possible. I don't think it's the most likely, but I do think it's an option.
What do you want to happen? Do you, in a world where you get to make the decision, are you hoping to see a scenario where Bogey's back because of what he provides the team, or a scenario where he's been traded just because that means, X, Y, or Z happened?
I think I would rather him be back, but I am not entirely confident Bojan gets you a lot in a trade. I mean, I could be definitely proven wrong with that, right? And I think if he does get traded, that probably means I was proven wrong. But as it stands right now, I would rather have what he brings than what he would bring back, I guess, in the trade, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think to just piggyback off Wes, like I think what he brings, his value as just a shooter, whether this team's looking to truly push for a play-in, playoff berth, or just want to like continue to grow and develop, like his shooting is probably more valuable than what you could get back potentially. Could be wrong there, but I think his shooting really helps. Like it even helps the bigs, just the spacing. I think I would be personally fine, happy if they kept him for next season. So I guess moving on here, the third and final question from KDA once again. Who do you think the Pistons will target as free agent trade possibilities? I guess this sort of leads down the path of we'll do free agency first. Like two of the names that have come up a fair bit are Jeremy Grant and Cam Johnson. I guess. What do you guys truly think the Pistons actually have a shot at Cam Johnson? He's a restricted free agent, reportedly looking for 20 million with the Nets, so you'd expect a bit of an overpay. Do you see that as even like a 10% chance of happening?
I don't. I think the Nets would much rather keep him no matter what. Um, and I don't think he's worth that much of an overpay, even with the cap increasing over the next few years. So I wouldn't really want them to go after him, and I don't really think it's all that possible. In terms of guys I do think they're going after, I mean, James Edwards has thrown so much smoke out on the Jeremy Grant thing that it's kind of hard for me to ignore now. At first, I was kind of skeptical that it was a thing, but he keeps talking about it, and he knows a heck of a lot more than I do. So I'm going to say Jeremy Grant.
Boo.
Not a fan.
Are you out on the Jeremy Grant sweepstakes, Sean?
I think I might just be out on Jeremy Grant discourse. Like, you invest in it, you live it, and then you move on. It's like that part of my life is over, man. I want a new narrative, please. That would be pleasant. But really, I don't see it, because what else is Portland gonna do? They're just gonna let him walk? Like, they can't do that. They're gonna trade Damian Lillard. I don't really see that happening. Is Damian Lillard gonna bless him leaving for some other option that's better? Like, I don't see that happening. So to me, him turning down a deal, I think, was probably more like his sort of like personal code or ethics, other than this deal is insufficient, I'm going to get a lot more. It was, I think, probably just, I'm not going to make the decision in season. We're going to wait until the off season, and we'll work through, representatives and agents and figure it out. And then, he's going to sign with something close to what he was already offered. As far as people I want to see, or I think might make sense, I've sort of been on the Grant Williams train for a bit. I think he fits a lot of needs. I think Boston would let him walk. I think, because of some mistakes he's made and some struggles he's had, the shine is a little bit off, but he's still a really talented player. He's not a perfect solution. That's why he might be available. So he's the kind of player that I think makes sense. Cam Johnson, I think, makes a little sense, but I just don't know what like the net strategy is. And those are kind of like the two big names that come to mind. I don't really see Kyle Kuzma making a leap, especially with Washington firing their GM. I feel like that probably means they think they're a lot closer than they are, and are just going to like reinvest and think like, all right, more cohesion makes us better. So now we're in the 8th spot. And then once you're in the 8th spot, you're close to the 6th spot. And then you're really a contender. Like, that's just, magical thinking. So there's not a lot of options this offseason. So if they want to sign somebody, they're going to have to pay a lot of money, and they're going to have to pay it to somebody with flaws.
The Grant Williams one's intriguing because he was looking for reportedly 4 for 80 million last off season, and obviously the Celtics held firm. And now it sort of seems like, just from podcasts and stuff I'm listening to, like 3 for 35 million. What would your thoughts be on a deal like that with Grant Williams? I'm not particularly a big fan of Grant Williams. Like, he does seem like a really good, like a winning player in some aspects, but
I think his warts are on his offensive game, and at a high echelon level where like you need to perform at a championship level in Boston with a lot of better options, or else your mistakes are going to stick out like a sore thumb. That's not going to be the case in Detroit. They're still trying to build an identity and offense of, even mediocre offense. So like he's not perfect, but he can shoot the three. He can do a couple things, and he's a really good defender. He's a versatile defender. He can play a couple positions, and I think that kind of just fits the Pistons' need to a T, and it just allows them to play around with funky lineups in a few unique ways. So that's kind of why that's my pitch for Grant Williams, knowing he's not a perfect player.
Yeah. I may be one of the only people still like you, Sean, that does like Grant Williams. Now, I will say that I liked him a lot pre-draft too. But he's a high IQ player, really good defender, like you mentioned. And I think he's got some passing chops on offense that don't always get shown too much with Boston. And obviously, he can shoot the ball. I like him. I wouldn't mind taking the shot on him, especially if you could get him for, I don't know, under 16 as a number. I mean, I'd rather have him than Bagley, and Bagley played really well to end the year. So, yeah, I wouldn't hate Grant Williams at all.
He played pretty okay on offense.
That's fair.
The Pistons really need like one good defender so everyone can realize how bad the defense is, like up and down the lineup. I think that'll put things in perspective as far as who's expendable and who makes sense long term, and a new coach. But like having capable wing defenders, like, man, as much as I said I don't want to relive the Jeremy Grant experience, his absence was so depressingly glaring. It just made for some truly unwatchable basketball. So they need to find somebody that can play big man wing defense and maybe guard a couple positions. And so to me, once you say that that's your target, it becomes a very limited pool of who can I offer money to and who's going to say yes and whose team can't match it. And like that is, or won't match it. So that's like you're going limited supply off limited supply off limited supply. So there's only a couple names that fit. So if it's not free agency, it's got to be trades. And then you have to figure out who's actually on the trade market.
for sure. And I guess that leads us to this next question from Pistons Talk, which we've sort of touched on, but I think we can answer this in a nutshell. What's a more likely signing, Cam Johnson or Jeremy Grant?
To me, it's Cam Johnson, only because I see zero chance Jeremy Grant leaves the Blazers. I mean, I think it's a low likelihood that Cam Johnson leaves the Nets because they're kind of in, let's just keep our assets and make it work. And it's not like it's failing miserably with all the wings that they have. That being said, they might just decide it doesn't make sense to give them like $80 million when we have a far superior player in their other superior Bridges. Thank you. Like that's the guy you build around. You don't, and if building around him means you can play and pay Cam Johnson, then yeah. But if it means like that makes it much more difficult, then you kind of just move on and bite the bullet. And that being said, that opens up for the Nets sign and trade possibilities. So if there was an asset that the Pistons could offload that the Nets would actually find appealing, then maybe things make a little more sense, or it's a little higher likelihood while still being pretty low.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think either are super likely, but I'm just going to lean on what James Edwards keeps talking about with Jeremy Grant. So I'd say Jeremy Grant's more likely. But like I said, I don't think either's happening.
Yeah, I think he's saying the Pistons like Jeremy Grant. They didn't trade him because the relationship soured, and that they would be open to a deal. That doesn't mean a deal is going to be on the table.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's tricky. It really doesn't seem like the Blazers are going to, like, even if they get that number 1 pick and get Victor, they're still not going to trade Dame. If anything, that obviously makes their team instantly a lot better. And that would obviously mean Jeremy Grant becomes a major priority to resign. So, yeah, I think I would have to maybe go Cam Johnson, but I do think either player will be difficult to get. The next question we have here is from Mark Faust. I think I pronounced that right. Is the front office's plan for playing 2 bigs going to deter any coaching candidates? I personally don't think so.
Yeah,
But
I don't personally think so either. But I'm not sure. I mean, Sean, what do you think?
I think that there's probably no coaches that are against the premise of playing 2 bigs if they had 2 good bigs, which I think was the fundamental flaw of the Detroit Pistons last season. Is they had nothing but bad bigs, at least on defense. So it just shock didn't work. Killian helps the defensive component of that a little bit, though he really throws a wrench in the offensive component, in my opinion. Obviously, Victor changes everything. And then Jalen Duren is such an appealing young center to build around and coach and scheme for, because he's a low usage, really efficient big who can do a lot of things, like especially if the passing's for real. So I don't think that, any coach is going to say, I'm not taking your job because you want me to play James Wiseman at power forward, and that's insane. Like, if he thinks that's insane, you just want to play him at power forward, and the Pistons would be fine with it. James Wiseman would deal with playing off the bench, and eventually you trade him or move on. So, I mean, I think the coach will have ultimate say in that roster construction.
You would like to think so. You would like to think so, because regardless of who the coach is, if the GM is having that much impact on who's on the floor, I don't care who the coach or team is. Like, that's not. I'd like to think that's not the case. But sorry, I cut you off, Wes.
No, I was just saying I agree, and I don't have too much more to add. So I'm with you guys.
Will you be okay if Wiseman's not starting? You're a big Wiseman fan.
Yeah, you keep complimenting him this whole broadcast. It's freaking me out.
I still think he has a decent amount of potential. I do not think he should be starting at the 4.
God, this literally might be the most I've ever disagreed with you in my entire life. Like, God.
Sean, I wanted to ask you something just before we get to the next question. So last year you wrote a really good piece on Killian Hayes. It was good. It was titled, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, it was titled Killian Hayes is Bad. And you laid out some stats, some comparisons. A really good article, and obviously it got a lot of traction and that sort of thing. Where are you at with Killian right now?
So I was actually really pleasantly surprised with Killian's season. I think that comes from having such low expectations for him that I felt like he was really turning a corner. And Killian Hayes is bad. He was really bad this season still. So let's just be straight with each other. He's one of the worst shooting percentages and efficient players in the entire NBA. But that being said, it was much less noticeable, at least to me, because he's such a plus passer. He's such a good defender. He doesn't sort of bog down the functionality of an offense because he could really facilitate. The fact that a player that bad at offense can almost get 10 assists routinely just shows you how good of a passer he really is, because nobody has to worry about his drive. Nobody should really worry about his shot. And yet here he is making good plays for his teammates. So he's always going to be one decent offensive ability away from being a real impact player. he moved forward enough to say, like, sure, give him another year. You're not going to sign a super better defender on the free agent market because those guys are expensive. They're pretty rare at the point guard position, especially with that passing ability. So, like, let's just see if he can be a 36% shooter. He's never going to be a finisher. Which is kind of bizarre because he's so big for a point guard. He's never going to draw fouls. It's really going to limit him. So it's like, can he be a 52% true shooting point guard with really good defense and really, really good passing? That's like a good backup point guard. And you can make a 10, 15-year career out of that. But he's not a 52% true shooting percentage player. He's like a 44%, which is just mind-bogglingly bad. So he's still not at that level he needs to be. But I'm starting to think it might be possible for the first time in his career. So that's where I'm at on Killian.
I think that's a good assessment, and that's all fair. I think even just to touch on the driving and free throw stuff, even the free throws he started to draw at the end of the season, they were those Alec Burke type, pump fake. Like they weren't in the paint really. So I think, yeah, if the jump shot can ever come around to a respectable level, you have a really nice backup point guard who can play alongside Cade, Ivy, and whoever else this team potentially brings in. Wes, do you have any thoughts on Killian?
Who's better,
that'll be
Killian
popular,
or
so let's move
Wiseman?
on.
I gotta know.
I guess we got the whole summer.
I said, who's better, Killian or Wiseman?
Oh my God, that's a tough question. Do I have to pick, Sean?
I mean, the answer's obvious, but you go ahead.
It's probably Killian.
Yes, it's Killian.
All right, next question here we've got from Christian J. Say the worst case scenario happens and we pick 5th. Who should the pick be? So I can go first quickly. I think for me, it's tough. For me, it's out of Cam Whitmore, Asar Thompson, and Jarice Walker. I really like Walker, but I think I lean towards Asar Thompson for now. What are we? We're halfway through April. We've still got a couple of months to go. I think I still lean towards Asar Thompson. I like the athleticism, the shooting. Seemed like he shot a little bit better from 3 at the OTE. The defense. Yeah, I think I sit with Asar Thompson as of right now.
I'm not huge on either of Walker or Asar Thompson. And with Asar, the thing that makes me pause is that he hasn't been that much of a playmaker or self-creator at the level of competition that he's at. And that makes me pretty nervous about projecting anything offensively for him at the NBA level, especially right away. The two guys I'm going back and forth on at 5 right now are Cam Whitmore and Anthony Black. I'm not sure which way I'm leaning. It's pretty even. I look at Whitmore, he's probably more of a 3-4 hybrid wing. Reminds me a little bit of Aaron Gordon, which would be pretty nice. And then, you're looking at Anthony Black, and he's kind of taller, Lonzo Ball. I think he can play the 3, guard 1 through 3. He's really high IQ guy. I'd be pretty comfortable starting him out the gates too. So one of those two are where my head would be with the 5th pick.
Yeah, I think I'm between. I don't even know if I'd say between. I think Whitmore's kind of a cut above, though I'm not an expert on this, so I can sometimes easily be swayed by like a compelling case. But like, you read about it, you look at some of what I try and look for are red flags and real positives, and there's a lot with all these players. So part of me feels like Whitmore's kind of that tiebreaker because he's playing at competition I can trust, because I've seen that level of competition year over year. So I can expect that like his ability kind of translates And he's got really high steal numbers, which I always kind of err on the side of trusting people who can steal the ball at the college level as a plus sign of instinct and athleticism and ability in the college game. So that really helps. And he went to Villanova. They know how to make good players that contribute all the time. So like, to me, as somebody who doesn't really get deeply immersed in this stuff, I try and just, go by the basics. And those are kind of like trust the competition, trust players that have a high steal rate, trust the Villanova program. Like that's a good enough excuse for me to kind of lean toward Whitmore.
He is a ridiculously powerful athlete too at his size. I mean, he bodies people even with Villanova. So Whitmore's a good player. I don't know, where are you at? You already said Jack, but are you willing to come off Thompson or Walker?
I just love the Thompson twins. Like maybe I'll fall on my sword. Like I just 6'7", they're just so fluid. Yes, the competition thing is concerning. I'm not going to argue against that, but from the study I've done, I'm just really excited by those two. I think if I like Amen especially, but I don't think he'll be available at 5. But I just think this team needs wings. The upside's there. The potential's there. This team needs athleticism still. Like it's still, I think Sam Vecini was saying on one of his recent episodes, the Pistons still have one of the least athletic rosters in the league, which doesn't particularly bode well, I don't think, especially for this team, if they're trying to get their defense, improve their defense. So, yeah, I'm still with the Thompson twins, but look, I'll probably change my mind.
Right there with you with Amen. I really like Amen. I've got him. I think he's probably solidly 4. I don't think anyone's catching him for me.
Yeah, sort of ironically, I said I trust sort of the Whitmore numbers, but part of me also thinks that we might really be underselling the Thompson twins' ability because of that competition level and the total lack of structure, the total freedom they have where they're playing right now. Like, it's hard to know how it's all going to work out for them, and you put them with better teammates, you put them with better coaching, you put them with in roles that they can execute and sort of maximize their ability. I think there's a real chance that nobody sort of exceeds initial expectations more than the Thompson twins, even as highly as a lot of people think of them, just because it's kind of a wild card how it's all going to work out for them.
Someone in the chat mentioned that this is similar to Shaedon Sharpe, and I would push back and say the Thompson twins are currently older than Shaedon Sharpe. So there's some of that going on too. Go ahead, Jack.
No, I was just going to move on to the next question here from Michael Davenport. What are the chances they don't make a trade this offseason? And I assume he's referring to like a major trade because there's always a trade that happens. So I guess Sean.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say that I find the likelihood or the chances relatively high because they're in a position now where they have enough quote unquote depth to, fill their roster, and they know the players they want to build around. So it's not like they're going to be just desperate for the kind of trade where they're adding a non-major piece that they want to give major minutes to, or desperate for an extra first round pick like they've been in the past. Like, I just don't see that as a high likelihood. So it's really going to be about them seeing something just kind of not fall into their lap, but just present itself as an opportunity that makes sense to them. And if it doesn't make sense to them, then, as frustrating as fans are going to be, like, it's just not going to be a major swing.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. And first off, shout out to my dad. My parents are watching, so that's awesome. But yeah, I think, I don't know, chances they don't make a trade at all. I'm almost thinking it's a coin flip at this point. It's got to be the right move. I think if something happens, it's going to be similar to Bojan last year. Like, it'll be late. and you didn't expect him to be available, and they jump on it. I'm honestly not all that excited by either the trade or the free agency market at this very moment as it looks. So who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah,
Well, we're gonna get Victor Wembanyama first in the draft,
Exactly.
and then
Exactly.
people are gonna be desperate to play with Cade and Jaden and Jalen and Victor, and the top coach comes on, and the roster fills itself out, and everything is great. That's what's gonna happen.
Well, while we're on it, one of the things we sort of had in the outline was dream off seasons. I guess, yeah, what would be your dream off season? I think we don't even need to ask the draft question. I think it's Victor Wembanyama. I think. Or Sean, do you want would you rather than take someone else?
No, I think I'm as much as a non-draft guy I am. I think I would take Victor. That's just me.
And I guess for the head coach, what sort of are you? I'd actually be keen to get your thoughts on the head coaching search. I guess, Sean.
I'm actually pretty excited about the names that are cropping up. Rex Kalamian notwithstanding. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm out on that. But really interested in Charles Lee, really interested in Chris Quinn. I think those are really solid names. People have talked about Adrian Griffin in OKC, or who was in OKC with Troy Weaver for years. So even if he leans on sort of that local connection he has from his previous life, that's not just Adrian Griffin's not a Nepo baby or whatever people say. He's one of the top coach recruits on the market. So that would be exciting. And really the names that I'm hearing so far, at least, they're not retreads. They're not he's led X amount of teams to the second round of the playoffs before, and we really want to make the playoffs. So he's not like Dwayne Casey was, It's time for a new coach with maybe a new playbook, and really to build a team that might be, needing some pretty unique sets and unique takes on how to maximize a Cade with a Jaden Ivey with Victor, as I said.
For sure. I think, yeah, the more I think about it, I think we said it on last week's stream, ultimately, me personally, anything I say is just I don't understand stuff behind the scenes with the coaches. I don't know relationships, but my general thought would be to go for a first-time head coach, which appears to be most of the candidates, at least I've seen listed. And I think with Wes and I were chatting before this, the announcement of sort of Rex Kalamian and Jerome Allen getting interviews is more so just probably doing them a favor to go through the process of a head coaching role, what it's like. But yeah, I think I lean towards definitely a first-time head coach. I think you're the same, Wes.
Yeah, I think I probably would too. I mean, at this point, I still like the idea of having a guy that's been around the block a few times as an assistant, but I mean, the trend league wide has been younger first time head coaches recently, right? And at least it seems from a lot of their interviews, they're interested in testing out those waters. So yeah, I mean, a lot of pretty exciting names, I think, so far. It's not like there's been no curveballs, I think. I think the closest curveball was Kevin Ollie, probably, right? So everyone else has kind of been expected.
Wes, what is your take on Jerry Stackhouse?
What about
as a candidate?
It sounds like he tweeted he didn't want to move out of Vandy, right? But I mean, if they go ahead and give him an interview, that'd be interesting. I'd be excited about it.
I just didn't know if
nothing
you watched
about these coaches.
Okay, I didn't know if you were a diehard Vandy watcher or something.
No.
Well, no, yeah, I'd love to know, I guess, about his coaching at Vanderbilt, because I feel like Stackhouse is just everyone's favorite because of the ties to Detroit, obviously, rather than.
I'm not sure that's true, actually. I feel like I feel like there's a breed of Pistons fan that is sort of like they might luck out that a really good coach actually has Pistons ties, so they better not blow it. No offense to like Chauncey Billups, who's still trying to figure things out as a head coach, and he might succeed, but like feels like to me, Jerry Stackhouse is the dodging the bullet version of Chauncey Billups, just in that he's, maybe he wouldn't succeed at the NBA level, but he's proven a lot in college and he's shown a lot of skills that people think will translate. And so I don't necessarily think it's just the Pistons ties. I think it's like, oh, this guy's running really high concept stuff and he's teaching it to 18-year-olds and they're succeeding. And he's basically like punching above his weight class in college. So that's like an appealing candidate to me.
I agree. And then I think the more important connection that he has is not the former Pistons player, but he was on Dwayne Casey's staff in Toronto, wasn't he? I think he was the G League coach. So he's got
Yeah.
a Casey connection, and Casey's still helping with the search. So, I mean, if he's open to it, I think they ought to bring him in for at least an interview.
Sure. All right. The next question, I like this one. This is going to get us thinking. So from Harry Moroz, apologies if I pronounced that incorrect. Which team currently in the playoffs would you like the Pistons to gear their roster makeup style to most closely to? So I just had a quick think then, and I was thinking, I love the Celtics roster. It starts with their wings. They've got versatile bigs when healthy. And then they've got multiple guards who can sort of create. You've got Derek White, Brogdon, and Smart. Two of those who are like elite defenders, or Smart is a very, very good defender. But when I look at the Pistons roster, it more so resembles something of like a Cavs roster where you're invested in the bigs and your backcourt and no wings. But so it's sort of like a bit of a contrast to the Celtics, but I've always liked the Celtics roster, the composition of it. It sort of works really well with this spaced out sort of era of basketball.
Yeah, to me, they could model themselves after Memphis a bit. Kind of, I mean, it depends on how much they want to put the offense in Jaden Ivey's hands versus sort of change of pace, alternate Cade and Jaden. But like, you have that elite athleticism. I pray every day that they develop a high caliber offense or defense like Memphis has, without the need of adding Dylan Brooks. And they're a team that's also not afraid to deploy two bigs. So like that's how it works. You have a big that can shoot a little bit, defend at a high level on the perimeter and inside, and then can basically not be a ball stopper. And that's really all you need out of that second big position with, a more traditional center. So there's ways to make it work in a Memphis mold that I think could succeed at a high level.
I think for me, this might be kind of a cop-out answer because they were a play-in team. They didn't actually make the playoffs, but I really enjoyed OKC. It's a very different direction than what the Pistons are going right now if they try to stick to this too big thing. But that's part of why I'm very interested in Amen and Anthony Black, because you get 3, 4 ball handlers out there that can all create, and you get a coach that can be creative and make it all work together. It could be a lot of fun. So I think if I had some sway, that would be where I'd try to get them to lean.
Well, there are some comparisons if the Pistons are able to land Wembanyama, because SGA and Cade could sort of play the same role. I guess Ivy's not as tall as Giddey, actually. There probably is some differences now I think about it. But yeah, that OKC roster.
Chet's just Victor, so
yeah,
that's
yeah, exactly right. So they're going to be a fun team to watch, that's for sure. Which sort of pains me because I feel like there's that group of OKC, Pistons, Magic, and the Rockets who are in this rebuilding thing, but OKC are miles ahead. And the Magic, I guess. Next question we have from Coffee. TJ Warren was a beast before breaking his foot. He's an unrestricted free agent. What do you guys think?
I don't believe he had a great year. Am I wrong in that? I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I was just
I'll
about to
do that
check.
while you're. Yeah, so you do that while I'm going. I don't believe he had a great year, so I think I'd pass. And he was never a great defender, which also gives me some pause. So I'll throw out my counterpoint. I think I mentioned this on the last one too. But if we're looking for under the radar free agents who can score, I would look at Terrence Ross. This will
Just
be cheaper too, I think.
2 weeks in a row,
why don't
Terrence
you
Ross.
want me to have one defender on this
Yep.
team, Wes? Just give me one.
What do
TJ
you think,
Warren,
Jack?
I
While he's
think.
looking it up. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was gonna say. I mean, he was much better in Brooklyn than he was in Phoenix in his limited sample. He's still not good. Like basically, he can't do anything but shoot decently, which that's not nothing, especially on the wing. But I just don't think you can ask him for a lot unless you think this year was like a rehab year, and it's one of those injuries where the second year is when he can actually show where he's at physically at a higher level. So like a high risk, medium, high reward guy. If you don't have anyone else willing to take some money and you want to sign him on a 1-year prove it deal, like I'm not gonna be mad if they did that, but I wouldn't have high expectations.
Yeah, I think without doing, I couldn't tell you the last time I watched any TJ Warren footage or anything but I guess as Sean said, if you sort of strike out in free agency and you can't sign any wings, because I was looking at the wings that are unrestricted free agent. Apart from the couple of top guys, like the only other two there is like Torrey Craig, which I could see him going back to Phoenix or signing with another sort of winning team. Like there really isn't a lot there. So yeah, prove it deal. I guess from memory, I don't know, is TJ like a heavy ISO player? Because that would sort of scare me. But I mean, 10 to 15 points off the bench. If he can shoot the three at a high level, then yeah, I'd be fine with signing him. Any more TJ Warren thoughts? Or Terrence Ross? No, we're good. All right. Next question's from Kyle Metz. So shout out to Kyle. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Whoa.
Would you trade Wemby would you trade Wemby and Cade for Luka Doncic?
No. And
my guts no too.
I mean, to me, it's not. I don't mean that to be a slight on Luka, and I don't even necessarily think that's like blind loyalty to the potential of Cade and Wemby. I just get real paranoid when you're asking me to build a championship roster around a player that's not a two-way player. Like I don't know how often that happens unless I really thought about it, but like man, you think about the guys who seriously lead teams to championships. They can't be taken off the floor, or they can't be played off the floor, or you don't have to basically build your roster or rotation or crunch time lineup about hiding their flaw. Like you just let them go. And Luka's not a good defender. He's a bad defender. He's a real bad defender. And that just freaks me out. So like to give up all your assets to sign a great player like Luka, then you're starting and saying, okay, well, how do I, with nothing left in my arsenal, how do I build around him to make a true championship roster? Like Dallas has way more assets starting from when they got Luka, and they're not even close to building a championship roster with him. So like that would make me too worried. I would just pass.
The thing as well, when you hit like on a pick like Luka, or you get that generational talent, is you're either in the playoffs or on the cusp, and then you're drafting from like the back end of the lottery or out of the lottery. So like it'd be a similar thing if the Pistons were to flip Wemby and Cade. I mean, yes, you'd still have Ivy and Duren, but there's still so many question marks.
Defensive question marks specifically.
Sorry?
I said defensive question marks specifically.
Exactly.
Like I'm really high on Ivy. Defensively, he's not going to be as good a defender as he is an offensive player, and that's no shade on his defense, really.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, as you said, this isn't a case of, being loyal to the Pistons or bashing Luca. I just think Wembanyama and Cade, that is a lot to give up. As good as Luca
Yeah.
is.
And I think I'd add this too, where obviously this is it's kind of an out there trade, right? But if something like this is my response generally when you get this kind of out there deal. But like if this ever actually were on the table, that means that the Mavericks think that giving up Luka Doncic is worth getting Wemby and Cade, which makes me think I might rather just keep Wemby and Cade. Like if they're valuing Wemby and Cade at the level of a near MVP player, like, yeah, I think I just kind of keep them, you know?
Cade and Ivy,
Ooh,
I would do that.
yeah, I'd do that one.
So I get
Bird in the
Luca
hand.
and Victor.
Oh, well,
Right.
sorry. Good point. We don't know if we have Victor. If we had
True.
Victor, I
Oh,
would
yeah,
do
yeah,
that
true.
in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think I would too. Because at least Victor can be an elite defensive player. Like that's the kind of player that can hide those flaws.
For sure. Next question from Bryce. Sean,
Oh,
enough
I'm glad we got
basketball
to this
talk.
one.
How do you
All
feel
right.
about Dorothy Lynch on
I've never
lasagna?
heard about this until I saw Bryce post a borderline pornographic picture on the internet of Dorothy Lynch dressing, which is a salad dressing on lasagna. So I looked up Dorothy Lynch dressing and I found a make-alike recipe on the internet. The key ingredient of this salad dressing is condensed tomato soup, which there's just so much wrong with everything I'm saying. This is disgusting. But I flipped because I read the history of Dorothy Lynch salad dressing, and the maker of this dressing, their nephew is acclaimed film director and transcendental meditation expert and provocateur David Lynch, who makes some of the craziest movies in the history of America. I'm sure that like the Venn diagram of Dorothy Lynch salad dressing consumers and David Lynch film watchers are like two separate circles, which this just makes me so happy that I'm pro everything Dorothy Lynch now.
All I think when I hear Dorothy is like the Wizard of Oz. I don't know why.
Right.
Just like I'm just thinking lasagna and the Wizard of Oz.
So
That's
I'm
my
looking at Bryce's reaction in the comments. I'll just say, Bryce, this is what happens when you ask an editor a question. My job's to go deep, man. I'm not here for superficial responses. I'm going to read the history of Dorothy Lynch salad dressing, and I'm going to tell you that David Lynch is the nephew of the creator of the salad dressing. That's just how it's going to be.
There we go. History lesson
If you're
over.
confused, you can watch Blue Velvet, Bryce. You can watch it with your wife and see how you guys like it.
He's not a movie guy, Sean. Yeah, it'll be a hard sell for you.
I'll send you a clip. Just watch it with headphones on.
All right.
Love it.
Moving on from Koo. Shout out to Koo and Locked On Pistons. What are the three of your thoughts on the Pistons running a Sacramento type offense in the future with Duren as a DHO hub and all four guys around being ball handlers that can create? So I've actually just been watching a ton of Duren film. I've actually got a piece that should be dropping soon. And yeah, he was really creative as a handoff guy. Like he can hit cutters. His screening was pretty good. Well, when I say screening, like screening when handing the ball off. There's a lot of optionality there that I think you could use Duren as that handoff hub. And I guess the team I envision does have multiple guys that can handle, can attack, can create and shoot. So I would love that style of offense. I think you'd be mad if you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the proof is in the Sacramento pudding about how effective that can be on offense. Like they're lighting it up on offense, and it's because surprise, surprise, people that can shoot who are open make shots. Like, wow. I know that Pistons have never figured that equation out in the last 7+ years, but like it works. But with their defense, where are they going? So you really have to balance that with like building in a capable defense. That being said, one of the things that excites me most about Duren as a prospect is the fact that he can seem to handle passing responsibilities as a big and facilitating good offense. Like that is a key factor of building around a big and not just using them as like an extra piece on a minimum deal. Like if you're going to invest in a big, they have to be able to help the offense function as a shooter and as a bit of a distributor. And I think Duren has that distribution down, and he's elite efficient on off inside. And I'm relatively naively confident in his development on defense. So, build around Duren. It's really exciting, and just figure out what makes the most sense.
I want to like it. So I'm going to wet blanket it here only because these are my two hesitations, but I'm not like 2 feet in. Sabonis can do a lot for himself. I'm not sure Duren's ever going to get to that level. So I'm all the way bought in with Duren as a passer, and I think he is, hopefully, fingers crossed, going to be a good defender too. But the ability for Sabonis to play for himself a little bit out of those DHOs, I'm not sure if Duren's ever going to get there. And if he doesn't ever get there, then it just kind of gives me Andre Drummond as the superstar vibes, and I don't necessarily want to go
Hey,
back
I'm
there.
in on that. Bring it back.
No.
That's
Oh
what got
my
me here in the
God.
first place.
This is, oh my, all right, no comment. I don't want to get banned from my own channel.
Sorry, Wes, did you have more to add?
No, I mean, on principle, I want to try it. I think it has a lot of potential. Everyone was just saying yes,
Yeah.
so those were my 2 hesitations on it.
No, that's very fair. I was thinking that as well. Like we are like Sabonis is like he'd have to be the second best playmaking big behind Jokic, who's arguably the best of all time. So I think I just like the thought of that as an outlet. Like Duren, I think he can be like a pretty effective guy in handoffs, but another cool thing about him is he can make decisions in the short roll as well as a pick and roll guy, and that's where Cade's going to do his damage. So I think to have that optionality is really cool. So
yeah, I would say, what he lacks in the skill level of Sabonis, like he's got the gravity. So he can just sort of brute force it inside, and you have to account for it at a high level and scheme around that. And adding a player like Cade and Jaden, who really improved as a passer, like you can build a really good offense around that kind of decision making and penetration from your guard, having Duren play that role, and just like get rid of Wiseman and add some real shooters.
For sure. Next question. This one's for you, Sean, as well, from Koo once again. What are your thoughts on Isaiah Stewart?
Oh man, Koo's trying to get me in trouble here. So I know Koo's thoughts on Isaiah Stewart. He's expressed them very eloquently over the past year plus. I would say I'm much closer to his take on Stewart than I am away from. My problem with Stewart is he's a big who's trying to learn how to shoot, and that's fine. But he's also a big who can't finish inside. He's terrible inside. He can't dribble. He can't finish. He's just starting to get to the line, which helps. But like, man, time is ticking. Like, you can't ask me to invest 3 more years in trying to teach Isaiah Stewart functional interior offense and functional perimeter offense and not expect him to be able to pass the ball really or screen super effectively. Like, what are the odds that's going to turn into a plus offensive player? It's pretty low. I really like him as a defender, maybe more than Kuz, although he can speak for himself there. I like his kind of positional versatility and ability to get out. I think it works much better as a center than it does as a power forward, because then those skills become a little more, if not dime a dozen, close to it. So for me to like Isaiah Stewart next year, like what's the path that we kind of described with Killian that Isaiah Stewart needs to take? He needs to be like a 37% 3-point shooter all season, full stop, at least 5 attempts a game, and then we can talk, because anything else is just like maybe he figures it out, and then in the meantime he's cratering Detroit's offense, and I just don't think the Pistons can really afford a full season of that. So to me, he's kind of on borrowed time unless they truly do see him as like a backup center. And then it's, fine. He's a good defender, can be put in versatile lineups. He can finish a game if you need it. But like as a core piece, I just don't see it.
Well, I guess off the back of what Sean just said there, Wes, in terms of how the development versus trying to win and put it like a functional offensive product on the floor, do you see the Pistons offering or extending Isaiah this season, this offseason? Or do you think it's a wait and see, show us what you develop next season, and then we talk?
I mean, if they got Victor, it's definitely wait.
He's willing to take a low enough price, they might extend him. And while Sean, where you were talking, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm much higher on Stewart than you are. But then you get to the end of it, and no, I don't think we're very far apart at all. I only like him as a third big. Like I don't think he's going to start long term. I think he probably gets to that 36% from three, 4 to 5 attempts off the bench, and he's a versatile defender. So like I like him for that. I don't think he's anything more. So like if he looks at Marvin Bagley's money and says, I really want that, like, yeah, I think you extend him. But if he's asking for much more, I think it'd probably be smarter to wait and see.
I mean, frankly, to me, you just wait and see regardless, because he's kind of replaceable, and you kind of don't know in the scheme of where you want to commit your financial resources, whether it makes sense for him or it makes sense for another position. Like, I don't need the Pistons to have $70 million committed to big men and hoping some of them pan out. Like, let's just move on.
For sure. And now a final question for tonight is one from Twitter from at RB Nesbitt. Going forward, if the Pistons are going to make a JD, a Jalen Duren and Wiseman tandem work, shouldn't they play Duren at the 4? Be respectful here, guys. Your answers.
Yeah, Sean, you go for it.
Oh boy. Well, let me state for the record that I don't think it's going to work, so it doesn't matter what they do. That being said, what's it take for it to work? Wiseman, to me, God, I just don't trust his shot. So, like, okay, now you're basically flip-flopping them on offense and defense and asking Jalen Duren to do a lot more power forward-y things. Like, I don't see that. So to me, it just, if Wiseman works at any level for any team, he's a center and he's doing center things and he's learned how to defend at a center acceptable level. So like, it's not going to work in Detroit because Jalen Duren is their center of the present and future. So I just don't see where Wiseman fits in. People say like, well, you can use a backup center, but he already makes like $9 million and he's going to want a bigger role or a bigger paycheck, and what he provides is going to be easily replaceable. So to me, it's just like, what are we doing here with James Wiseman?
For me, I'd also answer no. I think it's a little more complex if it were to work. Like if you could wave a magic wand and get Wiseman to do exactly what he needs to do to like make that pairing work, I think offensively, Wiseman looks a lot more like a 4. He's playing more out in the the mid range, around in the 3, and trying to drive to the hoop instead of posting up, and occasionally being used as a DHO or a screener where he's pretty good. And you'd let Duren kind of take a lot of the short roll stuff. But then on defense, like Wiseman gets lost so easily as the 5. Like if you ask him to play that free safety role and just have him roam, it's bad news. Duren's not a ton better, but he at least has more potential in that space. So I think you'd be trying to have Wiseman again more of the quote unquote four, but I think more accurately you'd be asking him to be involved in all the ball screens if possible, similar to what they tried to do with Duren and Stewart, where they'd have Duren generally playing low and have Stewart take the ball screen action on defense. I think you'd be trying to replicate that type of pairing, but in no way is Duren the four in that situation. I think. I don't know. What about you, Jack?
They can't shoot, so
yeah.
I just, I
2023
know,
basketball is really that simple sometimes. Like
I think I'm one of the. I love centers. Like I think I've got that sort of affiliation with Troy Weaver. We both love big men, but even I can't see it working.
And it's
ever.
Yeah, and it's difficult not because of Jalen Duren. It's difficult because of James Wiseman.
Yes.
Like he just is not highly skilled in any one area that it makes sense to put him out there, period. But especially with another big, like
well, exactly. It's like they don't like Wiseman doesn't bring you great defense or great offense. So it's like, why even consider trying to push those two together if they're not going to give you anything close to good or great on one end of the floor? Like it doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the whole quote unquote experiment was just sort of short circuited by injuries. So like, okay, try Wiseman with Stewart and see what happens. Try Wiseman with Bagley and see what happens. But then they both get injured. Stewart was already injured, but Bagley got injured again. So then it's like, well, we are committed to giving Wiseman minutes because nothing's more important than just actually force feeding him minutes and seeing what he can do and then really hammering home what he needs to do in the offseason. So he's just got to be out there. And then that meant like, who's he going to play with? And the pickings were slim and the basketball was bad in Detroit at the end of the season.
Yeah. No, I think if it ever were to work, you'd be asking Wiseman to make so many improvements in one off season, and a couple of those improvements would be entirely against the tendencies as a player he exhibited in his time in Detroit. So I don't think it would work. And I want on record right now, if the roster is very similar to what it is, I want Bojan starting at the four. I'm putting it out there. Give me the shooting. Give me the spacing. I don't care about the defense, Sean.
You want Bojan at the four? What about the rebounding?
Duren.
Yeah. I saw someone talking about this on Twitter. They wanted to know how many minutes Bojan had played at the 3 or 4. I guess when he was playing alongside Sadiq, he was probably the 4, was he, to open the season?
I believe so.
We might
that should be a basketball reference.
If Bojan's starting, like I think it's at the 3. But I do get your argument, Wes.
He played 53% of his time, allegedly, according to tracking data at power forward. So he's basically an even split.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty consistent with what he's been in the past. Because I know Utah was pairing him with Royce O'Neal. Like I think Bojan and Cam Whitmore would be fine. I think Bojan and Amen Thompson would be fine as your wings. Like I'd be more excited about that, and then letting them kind of figure out the matchup, which is Bojan being nominally the 4.
How about nominally the 3 incapable shooter and a defender at the 4? Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, there'd be Cam Whitmore. Go ahead.
Thank you.
So you're saying that Isaiah Stewart needs to start at the 4 next year?
I mean, if the roster stays pretty solidly like it is, and you don't see a huge improvement from Isaiah Livers, like who else is going to play the 4? That's a scary thought.
I'm with Kyle.
This is a real thing people say, Wemby at 3? Or is this a bit?
I think it's a bit. I
I
don't
think he
think
could do
people
it.
are serious. I think it's fun, but there's no way
Okay.
that.
It's mostly fun.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm totally open to being convinced that it's a real thing, but I literally not heard anyone say it. So
Yeah, I've just seen people post photos for fun as a bit. I guess I think that does it for all the questions tonight. So thanks everyone for joining, and thanks to Sean for taking the time to jump on and chat
Thanks.
hoops with us. Appreciate everyone's support. Once again, blown away with how many people are in the comments and the chat. It's been hard to keep up with, so really appreciate the support. Special thanks to Sean for supporting this show. He's the guy who made this happen. He's the guy who keeps the site running. And shout out to you guys for the great questions and talking points. Join us next Thursday at 8 o'clock. We can't wait to talk more Pistons with you. Peace.